What's the state of the Denver Nuggets entering the second half of the season? A look at the loss of the Oklahoma City Thunder game and some news and notes around the NBA, including trade season is definitely here. This is Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We appreciate you guys joining us on all the platforms that you do, whether it's on YouTube, where you can join the show and be part of the comments section as we get started late on a Monday afternoon, or if you're catching us on the podcast version on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get podcasts. Thanks for making us part of your day. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. My name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. Joined by Adam Aris from DNVR. You can catch the pre- and post-game show before every Nuggets game at the DNVR bar. Great place to hang out, as well as their daily podcast about all things Nuggets over at DNVR. Adam, how's your weekend?
Weekend was good. Everything's good, Matt. I'm good.
Good. Things are not so good with the Denver Nuggets. Things are still pretty much good, but not as good as they were a couple days ago. The Nuggets lose to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Nikola Jokic does not play with hamstring tightness. Michael Porter Jr. Sits due to personal reasons. We'll get into some of that very delicately in the final segment. They lose the Oklahoma City Thunder, and this was circled for me, and I talked about this, and you could say that, Matt, you always say it's a trap game, and that's fair. But I did have circled this on Saturday as like, hey, teams tend to have trouble on the last game of a long homestand before they go on the road. And that's before you factor in Joker being out and MPJ being out and facing a Thunder team that, quite honestly, gives teams the business. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander goes for 34 points, 5 boards, 5 assists. He is a monster, particularly versus the Nuggets. He always absolutely lights them up. Only 2 other Thunder players scored in double figures. Josh Giddey with 18. He was sensational in that first quarter. And Kenrich Williams, obviously, with the big 3 at the end. Adam, other than just like, hey, it helps if you have Nikola Jokic and you can't win all the games without Nikola. But what was your big takeaway from the Thunder game?
What's funny is you mentioned it as maybe a trap game. I don't feel like that's how this played out. I mean, I know Denver lost it, but I thought Denver fought well. They fought hard. For the most part, they were focused. The missed free throws were obviously a big deal. I think sometimes that happens, and I think a little bit of this is you can overreact to a bad free throw game. But I think the Thunder are a team that is tough because of their length. To me, the Thunder are proof of concept that length is hyper important in the NBA because they just have a bunch of long bodies. And so I thought Denver had a difficult time kind of getting into the rhythm of their game. But I thought overall they played really well. I was impressed with Jamal Murray in his second game, sort of captaining the team. I thought he did mostly a good job. And to me, this was one of those games that was, I guess you would say, an acceptable loss.
Yeah, I think it's tough versus this Thunder team that's going to target your weak point areas and not having a pressure point on the other end. That makes it hard. This Thunder team's a really good defense, and they've actually been surging. They've been playing really well as of late. Like, this team is much better, I think, than their record is. So, in general, like, I was okay with it. I thought Jamal played really well. 26 points, 5 rebounds, 9 assists, set the tone. 11-23. Was really mad about the final miss, was upset about that one. KCP missed, I thought, some pretty good looks in this one. I thought Zeke Naji played great. I do want to talk to you about Zeke from just like this perspective, since you and I neither of us are particularly worried about this Thunder loss. I noticed the fouls a lot, but then I started thinking and I was like, well, wait, okay, he's not going to play enough to generate enough fouls to foul out where his absence would be felt, because he'd have to be fouling out at 6 per 30, per 18 minutes. And that's not really going to happen, right? Because he's only going to play a max of 18 in the playoffs. It's a little bit of a problem, but I think you take the trade-offs with everything that he brings in terms of perimeter defense, the blocks that he brings, the athleticism. He was actually active on the glass. He's starting to get comfortable in rebounding, which is a big deal for him. So the fouls, I noticed that he sometimes has trouble with big physical players and with the physicality on the defensive end, but I kind of think it's like a trade-off that you'll take.
I don't know. Yes and no. I'm not worried about them from his own standpoint of like him fouling out, but fouls are really damaging to your defense. One of the reasons Nikola grades out so highly in advanced metrics defensively is because he doesn't foul. He doesn't give teams the opportunity to get easy points at the paint at the line, and teams don't get into the bonus because of his foul trouble. So part of me thinks, and I said this with Isaiah Hartenstein when he was back in town, it was my number one knock on him was he picked up a lot of fouls, and Denver seemed to always be playing with the other team in the bonus for whenever he got extended minutes. So I do think that if I had the number one critique of Zeke's game right now, that would probably be it, is that he fouls too much. And I do think it affects the team overall. That being said, some of this is like the growing pains of a guy who just doesn't play a lot. Fouling a lot is like a trend of players in their early minutes in the early part of their career. And I think it's a thing he can fix. And more to the point, not that these things are same skill set, but he also draws a lot of fouls, especially on the offensive boards. So there is a little bit of a, like, at least he's leveling it out by drawing a bunch.
Yeah, rebounding was a big reason why I was skeptical of him coming into the season, and he's getting there. Like this game was in particularly really great. The Thunder don't necessarily have a great cadre of centers in terms of like rebound. Like that's the one spot on their roster that they've kind of held open because they have Chet Holmgren. But even then, like just the fact that he can be a presence even against a good matchup, that's a positive step. So another good game there. Christian Braun, more good minutes. You gotta love Christian Braun going for 10 points in 22 minutes rather. 6 boards, 3 assists, physicality, the same kind of energetic stuff. I don't know. Like I struggle with this because when Nuggets fans are like, he's got to be in the rotation. I said this the other night. From a talent standpoint, like, is Christian Braun good enough to be in the rotation? 100%. Would he be a net positive? He's in the rotation. Absolutely. I just don't know how to get him minutes.
The only position you can realistically say he should take minutes from right now is Bones Highland.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the honest truth. He's not taking it from Murray and KCP. He's not taking them from Bruce. Those are like no questions asked. He's not taking them from Michael Porter Jr. when Michael Porter Jr. is in the lineup. Do you play him at backup small forward? If so, that means you're not staggering, which we know we don't want to do either. You want to stagger in some capacity. So for me, it's an easy thing. That being said, I've seen enough from Christian Braun to say I feel very confident that if he were to step into a larger role, Denver would be okay. And if you were to do that in the playoffs, I do think you need some reps with him, which is the reason I think this trade deadline becomes interesting for Denver, because it might just wind up that Christian Braun is a next year piece and he plays a little bit and fills in for guys, but he's not part of the answer. It's very, very possible. But it's also possible, in my opinion, that Denver does make a move and that all of a sudden there's a spot that has been freed up that he steps into. We'll just have to wait and see.
Bones Highland frustrated after getting pulled in this game. Plays just 11-22, 0-4 from the field, 3 assists, 1 turnover. Goes to the locker room, does not return. Now, I wasn't there at this game. I wasn't feeling well, and I don't go to games now when I'm not feeling well because I don't want to get my colleagues COVID. Like, that's just a rule I make. It was like, if you're not feeling good, you can miss a game. Adam was at the bar, so neither of us were there. But Ryan Blackburn did report, like, he left and did not return. Something, nothing, don't know yet. What's your feel there?
Yeah, and I hadn't known this by the time we did the post-game show yesterday over at DNVR. I think it's something. I mean, look, anybody that has watched Bones over the last couple of weeks has noticed a player that, in my opinion, has been out of rhythm. And I think some of that out of rhythm is honestly him making a sincere effort to fit in to what is being asked of him. His shots are down. His attempt rate is down. He's also missing shots. But it's clear that to me that he's been frustrated. And then also, if you just follow his social media accounts, it seems that he has kind of indicated some players sometimes will post a keep your head up. Well, you post a keep your head up when you're on a 9-game win streak. Usually it's like, okay, it's probably not a team thing. It may be an individual thing. So for me, it's clear that he's looked frustrated. He has had some injuries, the ankle and the finger. So you never know if it was something of that nature. But I would not be surprised to hear that Bones Highland is sort of at a low point in his 1.5-year arc so far in the NBA.
Whenever Michael Malone gets out of health and safety protocols, that probably needs to be one of his first stops, to checking in with Bones to try and get him get them back on the same page with everybody. Let's take a break. We'll come back and we're going to talk about the state of the Nuggets at the halfway mark. They're just over the halfway mark. We'll get into where they stand. Could things be better? Will they be able to keep this up? All that and more when we return on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I need to tell you about PrizePicks.
There it is.
Yeah. PrizePicks daily fantasy made easy. You just pick 2 to 6 players, and if they'll score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, and you win up to 25 times your money on any entry. I was on quarterbacks rushing this weekend. Did not work out great for me as no one could run. One of them got hurt, and then one of them just did not run in the snow, which was like a really weird decision when they were down by double digits. So tough one there, but that doesn't take any of the fun away from PrizePicks. You're not competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. And you offer projections on any sport that you watch: NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, college football. By the way, the Avs are turning it around. You heard it here first. Men's college well, not first, but along the way. Soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, disc golf, Euro basketball, cricket, and more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's just that easy. They offer safe and fast withdrawals, currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. Users can get a 100% instant deposit match on their first time if they just use promo code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON. Don't forget to use promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making this part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us. Matt Moore alongside Adam Mares. And it's time for the state of the Denver Nuggets. So as we reach this mark where the Nuggets are now at the 47-game mark, boy, does time go fast. We're halfway through the season, more than halfway through the season. The Nuggets stand at 33-14, top of the Western Conference by a game and a half over the Memphis Grizzlies. They've won 9 of their last 10. They've been on this incredible streak. They are 22-4 at home. That is the second fewest losses in the Western Conference at home behind the Memphis Grizzlies, who are 20-3 right now. They at dunksandthrees.com, which is a site that I tend to use because it's adjusts for schedule in terms of what they faced this in the terms of offense and defense. They are 3rd in offense and they are 17th in defense. They have faced the 29th toughest offensive strength of schedule and the 22nd toughest defensive strength of schedule. Those numbers are always going to be a little fluctuous. You don't have to necessarily like take it as like the Nuggets haven't played anybody, and you don't have to like, it's just a data point, just what I wind up using. I think that I think we could probably agree. I'm assuming that you're with me that they are right on track. I try to remember, as awesome as they've been, that we expected them to be awesome. And so to me, they are about right on track. They were below expectations the first month and a half of the season, and they've been above expectation just in for how phenomenal they've played and the margin of victory and how they've played in the clutch, especially since then. So they are about right on track overall for where I thought they would be this season. I think they're in a really good spot. The question is going to be about how do they carry this forward through the remaining 30 whatever games.
I mean, for me, and I break the season down into portions, and I think you might have even in that opening line there undersold how good Denver's been. I mean, Denver is number 1 in offense and number 7 in defense over the last 23 games. That's half the season, you know, basically that's half of this chunk of season. To be top 10 in defense, for one, in and of itself is remarkable, but then to also be the number 1 offense with a 120 plus offensive rating over that stretch is just, I mean, it's fantastic. That's a championship contender. So to me, they've been great. But the question is the NBA season is these little sections. Like, to say that they were great in basically the second quarter of the season, which is kind of how I would break it down, that won't mean anything if they're not, you know, a great team over this next stretch. So for me, you could almost close the book on a very impressive stretch that showed their ceiling, but we're going to learn a lot about them over these next 5 games. And in particular, over the next 12, I think there's 12 games between now and the All-Star break. I would break that as another section. That's the next section, is these 12 games. And I think we're going to learn a lot about them at New Orleans, at Milwaukee, at Philadelphia, home against New Orleans, home against the Warriors. All 5 of those games are tough. And Denver could go 0-5. They could go 5-0, as anything in between. And I look at that as they haven't been tested as consistently and as regularly as this in over 2 months. And so it's kind of nice to get to see what they look like.
Are you of the opinion that that first quarter counts as adversity, given that they were without Jamal, without MPJ for a long stretch? Joker had to miss time with COVID. They had a COVID outbreak.
And Murray.
Schedule was really tough for travel purposes. They were on the road almost constantly. Would you count that as having faced adversity?
It's a different type of adversity. I mean, it's definitely different. It was a challenging schedule. I think the biggest adversity of that stretch was just the reintegration of Jamal Murray. I think the schedule is obviously a big part of it, but I think we would look back at those first 15-ish games, 15 to 20 games, and just say that was a team that was bringing back a major piece and had to like refigure out how that works.
Yeah, I go back and forth because I think the question here is, do we know that they're going to be able to respond if they hit more adversity? Because it's likely that they will. Like, it's likely that things will get tough at some point, whether in this next stretch before the All-Star break or the post-All-Star run. At some point, there will probably be a stretch where injuries are getting a little excessive. Every team kind of goes through it. Very few teams make it out with, like, they've missed guys, and MPJ was out a significant amount of time. Like, I don't want to mitigate that. But, like, you look at Phoenix, and Phoenix is starting to get, like, even just getting Cam Johnson back helped them. They get Cam Johnson and CP3 back, and they take care of business versus the Grizzlies, right? Like, all of these teams, like, and this is what I try and stress this to fans of all teams when they're like, well, yeah, but look, we were without so-and-so. I'm like, guys, you played a bunch of teams that were also without, like, this is just how it is.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
You have to be able to play through it. And so mostly I'm just trying to figure is, like, do we trust them to handle and to still, not be dominant as maybe they have been, but play at this championship level adjusted for the adversity that they're going to face?
I mean, to answer that question, I would say I trust Murray and Jokic because they have faced adversity in their careers together. I trust KCP and Eric Gordon and Bruce Brown. Like, I think you almost get more to the individuals. The one thing I will say is, if you ask me the moment of greatest adversity this season, it was probably the Atlanta, New Orleans, Dallas stretch when they went 0-3 with all underwhelming games. Like, that was, it's hard to remember now because they followed it up immediately with their best run. But that was like, the Nuggets looked lifeless. We were questioning whether Michael Malone was too hard on them after the Houston game. And, like, if something's off with this team, they don't seem to be happy, and all of those different things.
Yeah.
And but I honestly, I don't think we were wrong. I just think it was like, yeah, that was a moment of adversity, and Denver responded extremely well and kind of played their best basketball. I do think they're going to hit a patch here. I would not be surprised if they lost 2-3 games in a row at some point in the next 15 games. There's just a lot of tough games on the schedule. So I do think we're going to learn something about the team, but I would be surprised if Jamal Murray didn't respond well to adversity, if Jokic didn't respond well, if KCP and Aaron Gordon didn't respond well. We've seen enough from them, I think, to know. Bones Highland, that's a different question. Like, we're kind of seeing adversity from him right now that he has never faced before. Christian Brown, Zeke Naji, even to some extent Michael Porter, and I know we'll get to some of that with him, but he's in a unique circumstance right now that I would not be surprised if it sort of, I mean, it's clearly going to present him a new challenge that he hasn't faced before. So to me, the team as a whole, I don't worry about, but there's little individual check marks along the way that I think will be, we'll learn something about them.
You have more regular conversations with folks in Denver than I do. I want to ask you this one. I get the sense, and I've gotten the sense from early in the season, that there's a lot of frustration over playing time. That just, like, there's like a lot of guys that feel like they need to play for whatever, whether it's contract or just like they can and they can help, and like everybody wants to play. Do you think that this team has the kind of infrastructure to manage that through the rest of the season? Because that is the only kind of chemistry concern I have. Because other than that, this team seems like they're in a really good spot with how much they like playing together.
I don't know that I don't know that you're classifying that properly to say that there's a lot of guys that want playing time. I think that most of the players on this team are comfortable with the amount of playing time that they get. For example, Vlatko Čančar plays some nights and doesn't play others. I have never heard that there was an issue with that from him, that he's like this or that. DeAndre Jordan has openly talked about, like, he's fine not playing some games, and the other games he plays, like, I think he's fine. The guys you're really getting at, and the starters all seem to play the appropriate minutes. Even Michael Porter has not closed some games, but I don't think that, I have not heard that has become a distraction. He plays enough, closes enough games that I don't think that's been the case. Bones Highland and Zeke Naji are the two guys who understandably are young players who have contracts ahead of them, who both feel that they have more to prove. And Those are the two guys. So that I know that's what you meant, but that's how I would class it. I would just be clear that I think 13 of the 15 guys on the roster are most likely comfortable in the minutes they play.
Let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll talk about the unfortunate situation with MPJ. We'll get you some injury updates and we'll talk a little bit about some of the trade stuff going on around the league. We'll do that when we come back on Locked On Nuggets. But first, I need to tell you about our brand new sponsor that we're so excited about. And that's
look at this
FanDuel Sportsbook.
Look at this.
The NFL playoffs are here, and we're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sportsbook in America, FanDuel. Also, by the way, the sponsor of my other podcast, Buckets, double dipping right now. Big FanDuel fan is me. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's even better. They've got so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers, join today to get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's $150 in free bets. You put in your first $5 bet. Just sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon. They've got all your favorite bets from the money line to point spreads to player props. You can combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. There's so many freaking options. I've already teased the Bengals and the Niners. Got great numbers on both of those at FanDuel. Got a good return on the teaser leg there. I think this next game is going to be a really great opportunity with where the Pelicans are at offensively to play some unders because the market hasn't adjusted to how Denver has been playing defensively. So I'll probably have things like CJ McCollum or Jonas Valanciunas unders because I think it's pretty likely the Joker plays. And if he does, I think JV might get into foul trouble. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Football fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Glad to have you guys with us on a Monday. So we're going to talk about this and we're going to do it we're going to try and be as delicate as possible. This is a really tough situation to try and get through, and you want to do it responsibly and you want to do it honestly. And we try and be, fill the role that we do in Denver, Denver Nuggets coverage. And so there's a lot to kind of get through here. Michael Porter Jr. missed the last game due to personal reasons. And that is because his brother, Coben Porter, the brother of Denver Nuggets star Michael Porter Jr., was involved in a fatal accident early Sunday morning. It killed the other driver. Denver police allege, according to the report from the Denver Post, that Coben Porter smelled of alcohol and was slurring his words after he ran a red light and crashed into another vehicle. That's the alleged incident. That's the version of events according to the police report to Denver Post. There are a number of ways that this is going to impact people's lives, and there are some that are extremely important, and there are some that in the long run are not as important, but those are the things that we talk about here. So I'm not going to get into I don't want to get into the details of what occurred because I haven't done reporting on it. I don't know enough about the situation to make sense of it. What I do know is that this is going to, of course, understandably impact Michael Porter Jr.'s life. And as a result, it's going to impact the season, which we talk about sports here. That's what we do. There are a lot of impacts on this. And if people want to talk about it, I'm glad to talk about my feelings on various subjects. I don't necessarily know that this is the place for it, but I am curious to get your thoughts, Adam, on the situation and what your general assessment is of what the impacts are going to be for the Nuggets, as this is a podcast about the Nuggets.
I mean, my thoughts are just that my heart goes out to all involved. Obviously the victim of this on the other side, and obviously the Porter family. This is this is a pretty major shakeup to the life of the Porter family, I imagine, and it'll probably have ripple effects for Michael Porter himself. How he handles those, who knows? But I think this will be a major sort of storyline for him personally. And as you said, we want to be delicate and obviously offer the proper perspective as we try to analyze him going forward. But it's a horrible thing. I hated I was live on the air when I saw it, and it almost knocked me out of my chair. And my heart goes out to everybody involved.
Porter was not present or involved in any of the Michael Porter was not present or involved in any of the situation, according to the Denver Post. So that's important to state up front. I think my reaction in these situations is always to have empathy for all parties in terms of there's accountability and we have a legal process for that. But that doesn't mean that I'm incapable of empathy for whatever decisions were made that have led to this horrible tragedy. And that's awful and horrible. And it's going to be hard for everyone. And, we'll see what the ramifications are, but it's going to have impacts throughout the rest of the season because that's life gets in the way. Like this is part of our existence in the world. And it's tough to manage all that. We are going to kind of leave it at that for now. As the situation develops, we'll talk more about it because I don't have much more to share as the process plays out. I'm sure Porter will probably have to comment at some point. I will say that we tend to be pretty careful in the Denver media of not being vultures on things like that. You want to be a responsible journalist. And I think the Nuggets media room has an incredible cast of journalists, but you manage those things with the human side of it, and we'll just take it as it comes. Got a lot of questions about the injury report, so we'll go ahead and go through the rest of this. As such, by the way, MPJ is still questionable for this game in New Orleans. I don't have any idea if he plays. I would be surprised if he did, but I'm not in that situation. Don't have any idea where he's at or what's going on there. So he's questionable with personal reasons for the next game. Joker's questionable with the hamstring. I wouldn't be surprised if he got upgraded tomorrow. I still read this as they're being extremely cautious. I don't see, I haven't heard or got any sort of indication, and there haven't been any reports or comments from anyone involved with the Nuggets that makes it seem like this is a bigger term deal. This is coming from someone that inherently distrusts the Nuggets training staff. I just don't trust them whenever they tell me anything. When they're like, well, Joker's questionable, his hamstring's a little tight, the first thing I want to know is his legs still attached to him? Because that's how their training staff tends to operate. Are you with me that I would be, I'm not going to be shocked if he doesn't play on Wednesday, but I kind of think he probably does. If you asked me to guess, I'd say he probably plays.
Adelman in the pregame commentary said that everybody besides Porter, who was out for personal reasons, but everybody went through a walkthrough and was a full participant. And he spoke in the pregame show as if he thought Jokic was going to play. At least that's how I interpreted it, which makes me think he's extremely close. So yeah, I think he's probably going to play. I will say, it's always concerning to me, Matt. This is the most back-to-back heavy stretch this month of January, and they have a back-to-back coming up on Tuesday, Wednesday. And I'm telling you, this happens every year. The Nuggets go through this stretch, and a player gets hurt, and it's like, oh man. It used to be Will Barton. Remember Will Barton when Murray went out and Gary Harris went out and Paul Millsap went out, and the Nuggets had an incredible January run, and Barton and Jokic both played incredibly during that stretch. But there was a price to pay, and that Barton kind of ran out of gas and was bad the rest of the year. I don't think that's going to happen with Jokic, but it is one of those things where I look at and I go, if fans were upset that he plays Tuesday and not Wednesday, man, I hate resting as much as anybody, but when there's an actual legitimate injury to be on the sheet, just be smart, man.
I kind of think he's going to want to play.
Maybe.
I kind of think he's going to be like, no, I'm fine. I'm good.
Hamstrings there's some injuries where I'm like, all right, you rolled an ankle, Yoke's ground bound, whatever, this or that. It's a ligament, this or that. But a hamstring to me is one of those ones where it's like they're only fully away, then you're in the clear. When they're 99% of the way healed, they're actually still vulnerable to being pulled again.
Yeah, and I definitely watch that. I think it'll probably be one of those things where the training staff gets 50 dudes and holds him back from playing. Also on the injury report is Bones Highland, who's questionable with that finger sprain. Don't know what'll kind of come of that, but it wouldn't be surprised if Bones also missed another game, whether it's to, get his finger right. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe that's why he left. He was just frustrated.
Maybe, that's why I say, who knows? Who knows what the reason was, and the team hasn't spoken on it yet. What I'll say, the last time they played, Bones got benched because Jose Alvarado got hot and made a bunch of shots, and it changed the texture of this game. To me, this would be a great game. If I was Bones, I would want to play in this one again because it would be like, hey, I've got to make good on the last one. But also just as hey, if you have a question about Bones on this roster, that question is, are you vulnerable to his defense or focus or whatever it is, stability going awry in a playoff series? And New Orleans is a perfect test of that. Jose Alvarado brings energy. He changes the games, and Bones needs to be able to handle those. So this would be a great test for him if he were available for it.
As far as the Pelicans game, and we'll preview that game tomorrow and maybe a little bit Wednesday. I do have an interesting note for you, and this is like a betting thing that I found, but it actually does apply to the actual outcome as well. The Thunder are the single worst team in the NBA in terms of team performance after playing them. So when you look at all teams, you play a team and then the next game. And I would tend to think that this would be very close. It'd be like 45%, 45 to like 51%, right? Against the spread, teams are 14, 28, and 4 this season for 33% against the spread after they play the Oklahoma City Thunder.
This is such a Matt stat.
That's also a multi-year thing. It's been true over the last 3 seasons. Straight up, teams after playing Oklahoma City are 20 and 26. They win just 30 or 50. I'm sorry, they win just 43.5% of the time. So, like, I can understand you being like, it's random, but it's been over multiple years, and it is significantly larger than the gap between other teams on the list, which I just think is kind of interesting. So be advised, this is I'm concerned about it for Denver. Like,
I'm concerned about it because New Orleans good, and because Denver is banged up and has some distractions that they have not had to face recently. So to me, I'm guessing Denver's underdogs tomorrow going into the game. It would be a good win if they were to get it. And they kind of need it because then you play a back-to-back at Milwaukee. Then you have a very good 76ers team. Like, these things can spiral.
Yeah, and the Pelicans have been really struggling without Zion and BI. BI might play. He did 5-on-5 this weekend, so it's possible that he plays in this game. It'd be interesting to see what they look like with BI and not Zion, but they've been really
Zion out?
struggling. Yeah, they've been struggling trying to keep him keep the team together. They lost a tough one over the weekend to the Heat. They were up and then lost it. Daniel West says, good thing Joker didn't play against the Thunder then. Fair point. Fair point to you. One more note on like the gas stuff, like the resting and maintaining stuff. A couple people in the chat have mentioned this, and I kind of agree. I kind of think AG needs a game off. He looked really exhausted last game, and he's been having to do a lot. Like, it's been a lot on him, especially with Joker out these last 2 games. Wouldn't mind getting him a rest spot in one of these 2 games on the back-to-back.
Yeah, this is the time of the season where you don't want to turn little things into big things. So for sure. They also have a marquee game, by the way, on ABC on Saturday. Like, I look at this and I go, the Pelicans game, if you just look at the standings, that Pelicans game is kind of important because the Pelicans are one of those teams that are first or second seed would be great. Like, fighting for the first seed versus the second, that's whatever. Getting one of those 2, I think, would be pretty big. But keeping Sacramento and New Orleans at bay, this is a game that can put, if you won this one, this would put 8 games of separation between you and New Orleans, which is all but eliminates them from competing for you for home court advantage. It's a pretty big swing game. To me, I would put this as a top priority game for Denver.
Versus the Bucks, which
is a no priority game. It doesn't matter.
Agreed.
It's the least priority, honestly, that you can have.
Finally, trade season's here. Rui Hachimura gets traded to the Lakers. That's not going to move any sort of needles for anybody. I've loved what I've seen from Hachimura this year. Wizards fans have hated his defense. I'll just tell you, like, when I've seen him engaged early on in the year, I thought he was really good defensively. The individual metrics back that up. I think he's going to be a plus for the Lakers. I think he helps. I like him more than none. They only had to give up some seconds for him, so that's like a good move, but this doesn't necessarily make the Lakers considerably better, but they've been pretty good over this last stretch of games. Like, they've gotten it together even without AD. Lakers are not doomed yet. So that's like still on the board. I would tell you that Portland's probably going to make a move, that they're too far behind the Nuggets to catch, but you should not be surprised if Portland makes a move. The one you should probably be a little concerned about is I do think Phoenix is shopping for something significant. Like, they're looking for considerable upgrades, and they have a lot of stuff on the table, including, I think, a potential deal with Portland. Actually, I think that there's already been some talks there. They have Jay Crowder to move. I think they're probably looking for options on DeAndre Ayton to make a major upgrade. So don't be surprised if the Suns walk out of the trade deadline with a considerable upgrade. There was a report over the weekend, I think from Hoops Hype from Michael Skota, that there was some discussion between the Nuggets and the Wolves about a possible deal for Naz Reid. would make a lot of sense depending on the move. It just depends on what you're going to give up, right? Like Tim Conley would obviously probably like some of his guys. You bring in Naz Reid to get you a big. You can probably play him in the playoffs. Naz brings a lot to the table. I like Naz. He's definitely hard-nosed, as the saying goes. So I think it would be a pretty good move, but I haven't heard anything from Denver side that indicates there's real interest there.
To me, it doesn't make sense to trade a guard for a big when you have too many bigs already.
Yep. I would probably say the same. All right, let's go wrap it up for Locked On Nuggets for a Monday. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Hope you guys have yourselves a great week. Appreciate you guys being with us. Leave those 5-star reviews and make sure that you take care of each other. Be good to each other. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.